Welcome back to Trots TV. Time to have a look at On Trial this week. We've got another 3 horses going on trial. Horses that have been performing well at the trials, and I think we'll return to the winners list pretty soon when we do see them at the races. Now, the first one I want to show you is a horse by the name of Rave Moonraker. Now, it actually trialled behind a horse by the name of Platinum Penny at Newcastle last Wednesday. This was trial number 2. Platinum Penny does a pretty good job, but Rave Moonraker is the horse I want to highlight. He's only a CO. He's had plenty of chances since arriving in Australia from New Zealand, and he's only been able to win 1 of his 7 starts. However, in his past 4, his biggest beaten margin has been 1.2 metres. So he has been knocking on the door. This effort was very good. Wasn't asked to do a lot in the early stages, dropped back and was allowed to settle, which is key for this horse because he can do a few things wrong in his races, but he went to sleep here for Mark Callaghan and was travelling very strongly, and then when Mark asked the horse to come to the outside, he just sprout swings in the last 50 or 60 metres and isn't too far away at all at the end of his race. Now, he was taking on C1s and C2s, so this effort by the COR1 is quite good, and I'd suggest that he'll be winning a race pretty soon. Look, the overall time was solid. They went 1:59.5. The last half was good, 57.4 and 28.7 home, and I got him at around 56.5 his last 800, so that was pretty impressive considering he was only really at top speed for the last 100 metres of the race. So Rave Moonraker, first horse going on trial from Newcastle last Wednesday. Now, there's a couple of horses that I want to show you from the Penrith trials. The first of them is the winner of trial number 1, and that horse's name is Phillipanderer. Now, I actually own a very small share in Phillipanderer, but I thought this trial was very impressive. He's a horse that can't do a lot of work early in his races. Trained by John Tapp, the horse normally goes back at the start and is allowed to settle and come with the 1 run. So that sort of racing pattern tends to mean that he can be a little bit unlucky in his races because he's running on at the finish and sometimes can run into pockets. But off the back of this trial, he looks as though he's enjoyed his break, and he will be returning to the racetrack in pretty solid condition. They went 1:59.1 for the short trip at Penrith. He isn't asked to do anything off the gate. He goes back. Jim Douglas drives him very patiently. He makes his move within inside the last lap. And it doesn't look as though, with 600 to go, he's a winning possibility. But he really chases hard between the 600 and the 200, and then is able to finish it off quite quickly. They went 58.5 their last half. That was leader to winner. Phillipanderer, he would have been around the 57 seconds mark. He may even have got under that for the last 800 metres. Keep in mind, he did win first up last time, so he normally races pretty well fresh. That's key. He did a lot of his racing last campaign at Menangle, but he does handle the smaller tracks, as he proves with his trial win at Penrith, and I think he's well worth following, especially early on in his preparation. So that is Phillipanderer. That was trial number 1 out of the Penrith trials on Wednesday. And there's a horse in trial number 5 called the Loanoran Ranger. Bit of a mouthful, but and you won't miss him in the run. He's roan, trained by Joe Rando. He trialled quite nicely. The horse that actually finishes second in the trial does a good job as well. That's the name of that horse's name is Real Stride. So I think we can follow a couple of horses out of this trial. David Morris drives the Loanoran Ranger in this trial. In the early stages, he draws well. He draws barrier 1. He looks as though he's going to settle behind the leader, and then a horse that's trapped out wider on the track goes around and makes enough room to drop in behind the leader. So therefore, the Loanoran Ranger drops back to be 3 on the inside. He's had a stable change. He was formerly trained by Greg Williams, had a couple of runs, but now with the Joe Rando team, off the back of this trial, I think he looks as though he's improved a bit. So he might be worth following, especially with his form, the way it reads. David Morris pushes him into the clear at about the 500 metre mark. He works to the front and then is able to hold off Real Stride in the concluding stages, but Real Stride isn't produced and asked to do anything in the last little bit. They rated 2 minutes for the short trip, so that time's okay. They ran their last half in 59.2. It was pretty solid. The last 800 metres, they went 29.6, 29.6. So I think the Loanoran Ranger is a horse that whose form doesn't read anything too crash hot. So when you see him in the form guide, you might get each way odds at his first couple of runs back from a break. So follow him, the Loanoran Ranger, and I think you can also follow the second horse, Real Stride. Interesting to see that the McCarthys had a big team in at the Penrith trials last Wednesday. So the three horses that are going on trial this week, we've got Rave Moonraker out of the Newcastle trials, we've got Phillipanderer from Penrith, and we've also got the Loanoran Ranger out of the Penrith trials as well. That's on trial for this week. Back again next week to try and find you a few winners.